On an ordinary Tuesday morning, when the sun had barely lifted above the rooftops and the streets still smelled of dew and dust, ROI's Haley knelt beside a fragile old man collapsed at the bus stop bench. His breath was shallow, his hands trembling uncontrollably, and his eyes were filled with the kind of fear that made ROI's chest tighten. Just moments earlier, ROI's had been rushing to drop off his son at school before heading to the construction site where he worked, but everything around him froze the moment he saw the old man fall. Without hesitating, he lifted him gently, steadying his thin shoulders, unaware that this single act of kindness would unravel a chain of events that would change his life forever and bring secrets, power, lawyers, and bodyguards straight to his door. If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Journal. It helps stories like this reach more hearts around the world. ROI's had never imagined himself as the type to get tangled in anyone's life. He was a simple man, a single dad who woke before sunrise, packed his son's small lunchbox, and walked miles to catch buses so he could make it to work on time. Every rupee mattered, every hour counted. After losing his wife 3 years ago to a sudden illness, life had become a long road of exhaustion and responsibility. Yet every morning, even through fatigue, he whispered a silent promise to himself that he would build a better life for his 8-year-old son, Zayden. That promise carried him through each day, even when his back ached and his eyelids fought to stay open. He first noticed the old man the week before. The man sat at the same spot every morning, on the weathered wooden bench by the corner store, leaning on a cane, staring at the passing people with a distant, almost searching gaze. He wore a clean but old knitted sweater and carried a small brown bag that seemed to hold all his belongings. There was something lonely about him, but something dignified too, like a story just waiting to be read. ROI's had nodded politely each day, offering a respectful greeting, but nothing more. Until the man collapsed. The old man's name, as ROI's later learned, was Idris Kashami. He was 82, soft-spoken, and lived alone in a worn apartment 2 blocks from the station. His wife had passed away long ago, and he had no children, at least that was what he said. He insisted he was fine, insisted he didn't need help, insisted he was used to managing things alone. But he could barely walk without trembling. So ROI's ignored those words and made a silent decision. Every morning, after dropping off Zayden at school, he would pass by that bus stop and help Idris get to wherever he needed to go. Sometimes it was the clinic, sometimes the grocery store, sometimes just around the neighborhood so the old man could feel the sun. And every morning, without fail, Idris would sit there waiting. One morning turned into 2. 2 turned into 6. A full week passed, and then another. Day after day, ROI's found himself lifting Idris's bag, steadying his cane, and listening as the old man shared pieces of his life. Idris spoke of his late wife, of how he once owned a small chain of bookstores, of how life had changed when age caught up with him and partners betrayed him. His speech was slow but clear, his memories scattered but sharp. There was a calm wisdom in his voice, the kind that made ROI's feel like he was learning from someone who had lived through storms and somehow survived. Sometimes, after long mornings of carrying cement bags at the construction site, ROI's would return home exhausted, but the thought of helping Idris the next day kept him grounded. In a way, it filled the empty spaces in his life, the spaces carved by grief, the spaces left behind by dreams that once lived in the heart of a younger man. And Idris, quietly but unmistakably, grew attached to ROI's too. He began bringing small snacks for Zayden, or books he kept from his bookstore days. Each gesture felt fatherly in a way ROI's had almost forgotten, and yet, something about Idris never fully made sense. The neatly ironed clothing despite his modest apartment, the way he sometimes paused mid-sentence as if carefully choosing what not to say, the way he carried himself with traces of authority, even in his frail body. ROI's noticed these things but never pressed for answers. He wasn't helping Idris for information. He was helping because it felt right. Then came the morning everything changed. It was a bright daytime morning with clear skies when ROI's arrived at the bus stop and noticed something strange. Idris wasn't there. For the first time in 3 weeks, the bench was empty. A cold worry slithered through him. He hurried to the apartment building, climbing the narrow stairs 2 steps at a time. When he reached Idris's door, he found it oddly quiet. He knocked. No response. He knocked again. Still nothing. He tried turning the handle, it was locked. Just as he was about to leave and ask the landlord, the stairway filled with the heavy sound of multiple footsteps, purposeful and steady. ROI's turned, expecting neighbors. But what he saw made him step back, instinctively point. Four large bodyguards in dark suits moved up the stairs like shadows. Behind them, two lawyers in crisp, perfectly tailored attire followed, holding documents in small leather cases. And behind them all, slow, steady, and escorted like a man of importance, walked Idris. Our froze where he stood. Idris didn't look frail today. He looked composed. Serious. Like someone stepping into a moment he had been preparing for. The lead lawyer spoke first, his voice firm and strangely ceremonial. He mentioned that they had been searching for RIs, that today was the day Idris wanted something announced, something formalized. The bodyguards stood surrounding them, expressionless, forming a quiet wall of presence. RI's stomach tightened. He felt small, confused, out of place. Idris looked into his eyes with a gentleness that softened the tension around them. Then everything came out. Idris was not who he said he was. He was not a forgotten elderly man with a cane and an old sweater. He was the retired founder of a massive business empire, one he had stepped away from after being betrayed by relatives and partners who only saw him as a path to wealth. He chose to live humbly, quietly, hidden from the world that once consumed him. He had no children he trusted, no family who cared. The people who came with him today weren't enemies. They were the last group of loyal professionals who had stayed with him through his final years, and he had called them today because he wanted to finalize his decisions. He wanted to give everything, every property, every account, every legal right to the one person who had shown him sincere kindness without expecting a reward. RIs. The news hit RIs like a blow. He shook his head immediately, overwhelmed and terrified. He couldn't accept such wealth. He couldn't even process it. His hands trembled as he insisted that he didn't help Idris for money. He never would, but Idris had already decided. The documents were prepared. The lawyers had been ordered to put everything into motion. RIs felt his chest tighten painfully. For years he had struggled, scraping through rent payments, working long shifts, watching Zayden sleep on a thin mattress because he couldn't afford a better one. And now, an entire empire was being placed into his hands. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel earned. Idris explained, with a fragile but unwavering tone, that genuine kindness was the rarest wealth in the world, and RIs possessed it more than anyone he had ever met. He said that watching RI's dedication to his son, to strangers, to life itself, reminded him of the person he once wanted to be. He said this wasn't charity. This was trust. And then Idris placed his frail hand over RI's and spoke with an emotional strength that shook him deeply. Kindness deserved to be honored, and a good man deserved a chance to rise. That night, after lawyers completed their work and bodyguards escorted Idris to his home, RI sat alone in his small living room, staring at the documents he still couldn't believe were real. Zayden slept in the next room, unaware that their life had quietly transformed. RI's heart was a storm, grateful, overwhelmed, frightened, hopeful. He thought of his wife, of how she would have smiled at him in that soft way she always did, telling him that good things eventually find those who do good, but the truth was, nothing felt like a victory. It felt like a responsibility, a heavy one. And yet, for the first time in years, RIs allowed himself to imagine a future that wasn't shaped by struggle. A future where Zayden could go to a good school. A future where they didn't have to fight to survive each month. A future where he could help others the way he helped Idris. A month later, Idris's health declined. The mornings became harder. He spoke less, walked less. RIs visited daily, spending long hours beside him, reading or simply keeping him company. They had become like family, bound not by blood but by something far deeper. And when Idris eventually passed peacefully in his sleep, RIs mourned him like a father. The inheritance legally transferred soon after, shocking the world of business and media. But RIs refused to let greed touch him. He reopened Idris's bookstores in multiple cities, turning them into community spaces where children could read for free. He created small scholarship programs. He helped elderly residents in Idris's old neighborhood. Bit by bit, he honored the man who taught him that kindness could rewrite destinies, and every morning, as he walked Zayden to school in the clean morning sunlight, he passed by the old bench.